So we're here at the International Transpersonal Conference in Prague. I'm with Jack Allocca, neuropharmacologist based at Melbourne University, and Luc Sala. So can you begin by giving a quick background of your
Well,
research?
I'm a writer about psychedelics, and I've used all kinds of stuff and done therapy with it. But my most interest is to see, to uncover patterns. Like one of the patterns is that not every psychoactive material has the same effect. And the way I explain it says we have 7 chakras, and you have to see where every substance hits. For instance, is obviously that MDMA for most people will open the heart, not for all, and there are stages that if you have covered your heart like young women often have against sex or whatever, just fear. If you open it up, that might come out.
Maybe some Swadhisthana as well, I suppose.
Yes, but for older people, you get a different story because they don't have that problem anymore, so you get more into the heart. LSD is more of a brain thing. Mushrooms are, more sexual, more lower in the second chakra. So it's interesting to see how different substances have different effects. Most important, how you can target in a client, in a person, the right thing. I've said it before, but there is 2 kinds of drugs of preference. Drugs of choice. The one that keeps you in your present ego, in your present state, and it's like if you go dancing or whatever you see. And the other one is that breaks your mask. So people have to be aware of the fact that those are 2 different drugs, and they open different things. And one solidifies the way you do it, and then when people go to a festival or dance or whatever, that's usually what they take. Say, oh, I like MDMA, and then it keeps them going into what they are. But in a therapeutic session, you want the one that breaks open the covers, the ego, the attachments. Yeah.
So I have a close friend who was in the US Marines for 30 years and he's got untreatable PTSD. What psychedelic would you recommend? It's very fragile.
I have to look at that, but if he has a PTSD that is caused by a trauma in his past, and this might not be the war situation, but actually something very early in life, he has to go to the initial trauma that caused his what we call dissociative personality to develop, which is usually hidden. Now psychedelics can help to get him there, bring the memory back, but then what needs to be done is go back to a normal expression. Like if you are in a war or you're being abused, you might want to kick, shoot, kill, bite, whatever the person. If in the therapy that is not part of the deal, you have the realization, but you don't have the thing in the body, because all this is not only in your mind, it's also in the body and in emotions.
The expression.
It needs to be expressed. And then you come back to what we call a normal expression, because it is of course normal if you're being abused or whatever, that you kick the guy or kill the guy or whatever you do. And that expression needs to be allowed. And in most therapy I don't see that. And so we come to the subject of where is therapy going? Well, I believe therapy is going with the help of modern technology to a better indication of your original state. Where are your problems? To give you an example, if you take an audiogram, which you can do with a normal smartphone very easy, you find often frequencies that are very low, that you don't hear. According to a theory by a French guy called Thomas, that can be seen in your back, in the vertebrae. That if there is a lack in your hearing, there's also a lack in your voice, but there is also something in your vertebrae that's like misaligned. So that's an example of a technology that maybe 10 years ago you would have to go to a shop or whatever, or a doctor to make an audiogram. You can do it with your smartphone. I'm waiting for the smartphones that would allow infrared photography or filming, or for instance galvanic skin response, which is a way to, like a lie detector or whatever, and your face in infrared shows a lot of autonomous and non-autonomous reactions. Like if you lie, there's certain twitches in your face that can be traced. So I foresee a time where we do therapy when there is, I wouldn't call it a lie detector, but it's called an emotion detector. When we use the technology that is now emerging, because like smartphones now increasingly will have infrared because you use it for houses and energy filming. You could use that for other purposes. Heat detectors, whatever. Technology, and of course then you need software and programs to figure out what that means, how it's related to the outcome. But so we become more transparent in a therapy session. Of course, now you have therapists who feel that. They look at you and they look at your face and see whether you're lying or not lying or you're evading or whatever. But it would be handy if we could do that in a more automated way. We wouldn't say, but and also in with yourself. Yeah, that you could help yourself. I just 10 minutes ago there was a guy who had a smartphone with a certain frequency. He believes that our body, and that has to do with what he calls or what we call radionics. It's a technology. And in his smartphone he could program something. I have something in my lungs. He said, "Oh, we need 5337, whatever." He programmed it, and I held his smartphone to my heart. Yeah. This morning there was a lecture of somebody talking about the microbes in our guts and how they have their own sound, but they respond to sounds from outside. So this old idea of music or a certain frequency on your tummy influencing your gut flora and whatever the microbes, the bacteria, the viruses are there might make sense.
It makes sense. I mean, it is used to increase the yield of crops as well.
Yeah.
So if plants can detect that, I don't see why microbes can't either.
Yeah, that comes from something very old. In the old days, they would call that correspondences. Magic is based on correspondence, which means that a certain stone would resonate with a certain star or a planet, that a plant, and everything is related to each other by symbols, frequencies, sounds, colors, which are all frequencies. And there was a whole science in those days to understand that, and modern technology allows us to use that science in a far more precise way. So I see a future of therapy where we really use better tools. Today, if you go to a hospital, in the old days they would measure your blood pressure and a few other things. Today they hook you up to machines. This will go on. Really, within 5 years, you come in the hospital, you get a smart band, not a funny things on your heart, but just a smart band. You will something that looks into your iris, to see the pattern changing, the acidity, whatever. We will have far more tools, and many of those will be available to individual people using them. Not in a hospital. And then we need the software, and I wouldn't use the word big data, but you need artificial intelligence to take those data and do something useful with it. But we're going there.
Can we move on to CAT, the therapeutic potential and also the benefit of using CAT in therapy over traditional...
The advantage of catinones, as they call it, there are artificial catinones now on the market, is that it's a very short trip.
How long exactly?
Well, just 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and then you feel good for a while. But
can you describe the phenomenology of the experience?
It's very sincere. You become real. But you don't see things with catinones. You don't become really psychedelic in the sense that, oh God, the world is changing. No, you open up.
Does it bring you out of your mind more towards your heart, would you say?
Yeah, it brings you in your heart, you could say, but not so much as MDMA. A little bit lower, a little bit more in your
Manipura?
Yeah.
The third chakra?
Yeah, high in there. So your power to manifest. It's a very interesting material.
And what kind of mental health problems or repressions in a person would you recommend?
What we
it
have
for?
used it mostly, there is a whole generation of older people, say 60 or 70, who admit they should try something. Yeah, and they don't want to go to cannabis or whatever, and they don't want to go to LSD, and then this material, this catinone cat, is like a first introduction to entering
A gateway.
altered states. Yeah, it's a gateway, altered states of consciousness. And for that, it is quite good because it's very light, and then suddenly people say, "Hey, there's another world out there," without the risk of, older people always are worried about their heart and, do I get a stroke or stuff like that. So it's very mild.
What's the legal status of cat?
What?
What's the legal status of cat?
Well, about 3 years ago it was still legal, and it was flown in as leaves from Somalia every day in Amsterdam and other places. And then, because there was so much traffic, because all the Somali people would drive to it, they made it illegal. So in Europe, some countries it's still legal, in others it's not.
Do you remember those in which it's still legal?
I don't know. They said that it was in England, but I doubt it. It's but I'm sure there are. I wouldn't say we find every day new psychedelics, but there are, of course, many plants with some kind of things. In Amsterdam, if you go to the what they call smart shops, you will find kratom and and UU, whatever stuff there is. There are so many herbs. It's like nature has whatever we call poisons or whatever. In fact, are psychoactive stuff, substances, and for a pharmacologist, it's a wonderful world. Yeah, you can find new stuff and new combinations, and sometimes you don't know that if you take this one and that one combined, like in ayahuasca, it has this effect. We're finding out. It's the work of people like you to do that. It's good if then for a while it's still legal. The problem is we make everything illegal without knowing it. What the beneficial effects could be.
Could we touch on ayahuasca? Now, you mentioned yesterday something that might be considered controversial. I certainly never heard of this phenomenon before. But you said that the visions, the real powerful visions from ayahuasca, are associated with the liver.
Yeah.
And Albert Hoffman himself said that as well.
Yes, and Professor Bastiaans, who was an early worker with LSD. So both LSD and ayahuasca do that. It's the liver that makes, I don't know, the mechanism, I don't know, it's up to pharmacologists. But
So people with liver damage don't get the visions?
They get more visions.
Oh.
So if you have like a liver cirrhosis, when your liver is
But
damaged,
that makes sense because it would be broken down more slowly. That's a direct effect.
And what you see that for ayahuasca, that people come to these ayahuasca sessions, and I've been in many sessions, there's a certain group that comes to see the movies, the cinema. They don't want any stories, they don't want any music, they want to lie down in the dark and see these beautiful colors and buildings and whatever, and they come back and back. I found out that the ones that come back because they only want to see the thing is usually have a liver problem. You would see them and you see a slight yellow color in their appearance,
Maybe they've just been drinking too much orange juice.
Yeah, you can do
that
something.
problem once.
We used to give them Cardus Marianum homeopathic drops to ease the liver before they took it. But after a time I said, well, we don't want you there. We don't want people that come here only to watch the movies. We want people that come to grow into another level. Because otherwise you would, you have an ayahuasca session, there's 15 or 20 or 25 people lying there, and you pick up from the next person. And if the next person is not into change, into transformation, what's the purpose, yeah? And again, those people would take the ayahuasca just as a drug of choice because it would fortify their ego. And what we wanted was people that come to say, I want to change, I want to go inside, see what my core identity is, and what is the purpose of my life, what is the purpose of my health, where am I going, which is a different and ritual thing. Of course, now there is ayahuasca. I think, you go to the movies, you go take an ayahuasca session in Amsterdam. It's really like that. Very fashionable. People make trips to the jungle. There's a lot of commercialism there and abuse in that sense. People are abused in many ways when they go there, not only money but sexual, whatever. I find it not a very good situation.
How do you think non-chemically induced ways of inducing altered states compare to psychedelics?
Well,
for example,
we were
holotropic
talking
breathwork.
about therapy. As I said, there's a part of therapy that is intended to make you remember the traumatic experiences. That's good. You can use psychedelics for that, but also regression therapy, hypnosis, whatever. But that comes the stage where you have to express that. And there, virtual reality, for instance, is a great tool that has potential. Already in 1990, I wrote a book with Timothy Leary and some other people, John Perry Barlow, about virtual reality, and we said, this is the electronic drug. Yeah, it's an electronic drug. And we knew that we have to use frequency following responses, like you use in brain machines, flickering eyes, flickering music, left, right. Your ears are very sensitive to all kinds of suggestions. You can do what we call guided meditations. But with virtual reality, you can bring it to a higher level. And you can bring it to the level where people are immersed in that reality. For instance, you can then allow them to shoot or to kill or to do something, which might be, and I'm just saying might be, a way to allow them to express their hidden emotions in a normal way, going back to what it was intended to be. Because if you were in a war and they were shooting at you or whatever, your normal reaction would be to shoot back or whatever, and then the trauma exists because someone said you cannot shoot or hide or whatever, or you're being abused by sexually. If you would stand up against the guy and bite him or whatever, he would kill you. So you don't do that. So you hide your expressions, and what you then do in PTSD, for instance, you take them onto yourself. Your expression is no longer towards the outside world, but towards yourself. So you don't sleep, you get all kind of disorderly things. You might shake, you might this. There's all kinds of things that go wrong. There's a whole list of PTSD symptoms. They're directed to yourself. No, you want person to learn to direct them again to the outside world, the normal way to deal with trauma. Yeah? So I believe technology is going to help us there. Because I wrote books about virtual reality, I go to these meetings with the present day virtual reality, which is really a reiteration of what we did 27 years ago. But you see, like 60% of the people developing software there now realize it's an electronic drug. It's about lifestyle change. A good example is people with diabetes. Usually that is the result of their lifestyle, the food, and they don't move enough. If you could get them to be in an immersive environment like virtual reality, maybe you can lure them, stimulate them to start moving. And we have these computers these days, game computers, where you have to move, where you can do things. You actually have to use your body, and that's what you want, a lifestyle change. So I think technology is going to help us a lot there. And at the same time, there's the danger that, for instance, the security organizations are going to use all this technology to figure out who you are, make up your identity as a terrorist or not, or whatever. And so that there is a potential threat to freedom, and there's also the potential threat because of privacy. Because if I can look on my smartphone and see your frequency of your eyes and know when you're lying, yes, that could be used by the police, but it could also be used by someone in a bar and saying, you want to sleep with me, yes or no, and there's all kinds of dangers there. So It is like a knife, you know, you can use it to cook and you can use it to kill. This technology has two sides, but it is allowing us more and more artificial intelligence, which means developing mathematical ways to deal with data will give us new tools and new possibilities. So I'm optimistic there that will help us, because we have to see that for instance, PTSD is a very serious threat, especially in America. We now talk about between 7 and 10%, and with military people maybe 15% or whatever, but they don't count the 20 million people in America that have been in jail. I think someone said 42% of the people that have been in jail, seriously in jail, have developed multiple personality syndromes and stuff like that, and they had to, because they had to survive, yeah? But when they come out of jail, they will develop PTSD or multi-identity or whatever, and there will be a problem. So America is on its way to an epidemic PTSD kind of problems, yeah? Whether you call them PTSD or post incarceration syndrome, doesn't matter. But we are making people in the American penal system, in the jail system, it's very unhealthy.
Well, that bears the question of trying to prevent these things from happening in the first place, rather than treating them.
Yes, but how do you do that? In America, society. Jails became an industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah? And there is, you know, people want people. Yeah, it's not a simple ethical problem, but I would say that the financial results of treating people badly are that they get sick and they develop nasty diseases and disorder. And if they die out of it, you could say that's easy, but it's not like that. They will influence their family. Yeah, there's some research done on PTSD with veterans, how much their family, their children, their parents, the whole environment is like infected with their symptoms because they don't function normally, so the family doesn't function. So, yeah, and so it's passed on to the next generation. Being a child of a veteran who has PTSD, Jesus, yeah? Yeah, and we're building
Passed on by the epigenetics as well.
Yes, it of course. This is all epigenetics. It's not in your gene, but you know, we know now from Lamarck and other insights, and not Darwin, that epigenetic changes. Like if the family or if the parents drink, that after 7 generations, this gets into the DNA, from the RNA to the DNA. So epigenetic changes, which are really, we now know the reason of evolution. Now we came there. The Darwinian mutation theory is kind of too slow to do that. It does exist, it's the way it goes. But the Lamarckian adaptation to the situation and to the environment, which eventually gets into the DNA, is how humans have developed. And that's where I come to, maybe it's a funny story, but I believe that the apes, especially the large apes, are degenerated humans. We are not evolved apes. Now you can say that is a weird theory, Rudolf Steiner said it once or whatever, and at the moment there's a lot of DNA proof for that. But it means that apes are human beings that degenerated and lost their consciousness. Yeah? So they have a limited consciousness.
Which might not have been a bad thing.
No, might be no. But so they're ideal if you want to experiment with self-consciousness, start with apes. Yeah?
Give them psychedelics, are you saying?
Yes, give them psychedelics. For instance, you know, but give them brain machines, expose them to.
Well, John Lilly did some work giving psychedelics to dolphins. Perhaps
yes,
he did with apes as well.
Dolphins are also mammals that went back into the sea for some reason, and I wouldn't say that we or that dolphins are degenerated to humans. That goes a little bit too far. But yes, there seemingly was a time when they communicated in a way that's nearly human. We find out now that whales and dolphins, they have real conversations. it's also known that you can teach apes, big apes, all kind of human kind of things, like counting and in text. They can do wonderful things, which means you can reopen their original human awareness. So the theory is that basically that there were humanoids or pre-humans, and they lost the power over fire. Now, if you lose fire, you have to eat raw food. Now, just imagine if you eat raw food, it takes a lot of time. An ape spends 70% of the day. So what happens is that the ape, losing the fire, their jaws got bigger. All the energy that normally went to the head went to the jaw. And also, their belly became much bigger. So they had to sit down. So they became bipeds on their asses, like monkeys. Yeah? But these were isolated cases. Apes only live in very isolated areas, like on the mountain or in the tropical forest, but relatively isolated, while we humans live everywhere. We're the most flexible mammals. We can run away, we can use our hands, we can make tools. Now, this is not unique to humans. More and more we see animals that use tools, but similarly, we can build rockets, and smartphones, and stuff.
You mentioned yesterday in your talk about the ancient Egyptian
model of the
body and how they harmonized the mind and body and...
Yes, I think that these old cultures, especially the Egyptians, had a far better idea about psychology than we credit them for. And an example is this. Many Eastern traditions in very general say that we have a full self and a true self. And your true self is then your inner core, your inner child, whatever. And the full self is the ego. Now, the Egyptians call that, use other words, but okay, they use the Ka, which is then your core identity, and Ba, which is translated as personality. But the funny thing is that if you see what I mean by it, they don't see it as a full self. They see it as your mentor, as your guide, as something that helps you, that helps the core identity to develop in the direction that was like the scenario that was laid out. So they see the ego much more, what you could call the ego, much more as a support, as something that helps you in life to have those experiences and those lessons that bring you to where you want to go. And at the end of the life, they said the Ka and the Ba unite, and then in their vision, if you were a pharaoh, you became a star. But basically, they say it comes together at the end of your life again. Your ego kind of unites again with the core, and so that's a far more positive way of looking at the ego.
The ego is very important.
Yeah, it is an important factor. Without an ego,
it's a very human thing. We would not be human without it.
Yes, it's the primal dissociation. You have that core identity, that inner child, whatever is deeply hidden, and then you have this outside thing that you show to the people. We call that personality. Personality is nothing but expressed identity. That's an important phrase. Personality is expressed identity. Identity is the whole thing. Personality is just what you do in interaction. Yeah, how you come across to me, that's your personality. But your identity is much more. There's all the hidden stuff that I don't see, and the subconscious, and the whole where you came from, and your ancestry. I don't see that. I see only the expression of it. So I have a feeling that these Egyptians understood that better, and that shines through in their culture. And we have to understand that those cultures were very long-lasting. We talk Egypt 3,200 before Christ to about 300 after Christ. That is 3 millennia. Can you imagine any company here that exists more than 100 years? Yeah, no. So structures. These old structures are...
So we perhaps need to look to ancient history and ancient civilizations to make forward progression in psychology.
Yes. I don't think that our present notion of psychology it's too much cerebral, cognitive. Yes, we think, we're going to solve the problems here, and in a way that's true. But we have our body, our emotions, and we have the connection to the other world. We're here at a Transpersonal conference. Now, what does the word transpersonal mean? I always say it's transpersonal because it's all people that with CE, trans with CE, it's all about psychedelics. No, it's also about the connection with the other world, with the divine. And since Freud and Jung would go a little bit in that direction. We've made psychology a mental, rational thing. It isn't. We are spiritual beings, and that has to come back. Really, we have to come back. It's been cut out of our society, cut out of our culture in the Western world. Yes. And if you then see, for instance, that the incidence of PTSD in America is between 7 and 10%. On general, but in Africa it's maybe 2%, and in India, because of what? Yeah, that's the question we can ask. Is it because of the family structure? Is it because of the belief system? Is it because of the food? Maybe because they don't have so many cars, or whatever the reason is. But we have to look at that. Yes, why is a nation like or a culture really like the Western USA culture so much focused on individualism? And the winner takes all and all that kind of thing, yes, compared to older cultures where the collectivity, where being together, where feeling compassion was more important. You see, every culture can be defined as somewhere on the axis between communal and individual. They make a choice. Now, America is very much towards the individual. Maybe the communist countries were too much to the other side. But every culture is a choice there. An ethical set of moral standards is based on where you go there. Yeah? And you could say, this is what God tells us, like in the Bible. But it's also rational. It's a kind of, you make a choice. What is the individual value versus the communal value? Yeah? And we make different choices there, different cultures, but it feels a little bit like America or the Western culture in general has moved too much towards this individuality.
Sure.
And so we have to go back. But if we forget that there is, apart from this, there is the vertical connection, the other world, the things we cannot measure, we cannot say beauty is like, what we do, of course, we say, this painting is worth so much. But in your heart and in your life, there is beauty, there's the sense of kinship, there's the sense of justice. We cannot measure it, but it drives our life. Nobody buys a car because it has, maybe a few people, it has 5.6 liter engine. No, I like this Maserati, there is something there. I like the lines, the Nobel Prize winner Kahneman has figured it out. He said, economy is not based on rational decisions, on homo economicus. It's based on homo emotional.
Desire.
We make choices, and we'll learn more about it. And of course, now we also know that with pharmacological means, we can influence those feelings more. We give you serotonin, oxytocin, whatever. Yeah. In Amsterdam, they sell oxytocin as a drug.
Spray?
Yes.
The spray?
Lots of people take Ritalin, which was a drug for ADHD, now to enhance their cognitive capabilities. So we can do much more than in the past, but we have lost also a lot. In the old days, you would go to church and you would feel good about it. Yeah. And it was the high day of your life, and as Aldous Huxley said, just imagine in the old days when there was no music in life and there was no color, because even painting your clothes was expensive, and you would go to this church on Sunday, and suddenly there was this music and the stained glass and the colors, and the priest would have a red thing that you've never seen except in flowers. Man, this was like a psychedelic trip.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Suddenly your awareness expanded, and that was beautiful. And so you would go to church and think there is something special. Now, on Saturday night or in the weekend, we go and do an ayahuasca session. Yeah. So, where are we going? I don't know. I think everything we should look for is meaning. We should look for meaning. And we can use psychedelics, and we can use therapy. but it's our general concern to look for meaning, especially in a time where the traditional thing, which was religion and work, are falling away. We have to find something new to give meaning to people's life. Yeah, and if we don't provide it, they're going to look for it, and then they might become terrorists or whatever.
They call it logotherapy.
Logotherapy, yeah.
A search for meaning.
The search for the original logos, which in the Bible said that's what it started. Okay, good.
Right.
I think we'll leave it at that. Yeah.
We'll leave
Thank
it at
you
that.
very much.
Okay, thank you.